welcome to Why We Are Christians. Tonight we are here with Clayton Chamberlain, and we will be talking about how he became a Christian and things he's gone through since and before and what he's currently up to. So Clayton, tell us about some of your childhood and where you were born.
Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit, if you don't mind, because I think there's a common thread in kind of a hereditary thread, if you will, of personality. Mm-hmm. My grandfather was a very strong-willed person.
That's why you are. I can tell you probably like him.
And so he was very forceful and very opinionated. And he was in the Navy during Pearl Harbor. He was a firefighter. And while Pearl Harbor and lived to tell the tale. So he was a very strong-willed person.
He was a cool guy.
Yeah. And my mother followed in his footsteps. You know, when she fell in love at a very young age, I think she was 18 or 19, she wanted to marry my father, and my grandfather forbade it. He said, no, he's not the right guy for you. He's not a good person. So she did what any person would do at that age who was strong-willed. She eloped and went to Ohio with him. Had me, one little story, when she had me, just to illustrate another example of her will, the parents of my father came in, his name was Edward, and indicated that she will be naming him Edward, when I was born. And I can tell you one thing about my mother, if they presented it in that way, a lot of things could happen, but I would not be called Edward.
Definitely not Edward.
She was actually English. Halstead was the maiden name. So my name was chosen simply because she opened a baby book, and as long as it wasn't Edward, it was okay, and she hit the page, and
Clayton.
there's Clayton.
Okay.
That's right. So very strong-willed person, and yeah, I kind of got that trait, for good or for ill. And it's part of what the family dynamic is. When I was a younger man, she knew how to. She was 5'2", little woman, and what happened is my father had an affair, cheated on her. She had to go back to live with my grandfather, her father, and you can bet that she got a lot of grief over that.
Yeah, must have been pretty bad.
I probably could be accused of petty thievery and getting drunk as a teenager and that type of thing, but really overall it wasn't that bad. But we're in a small town. Remember, I grew up
Bowling Green.
No, it wasn't Bowling Green. It was upstate New York. Yeah,
okay.
it was upstate New York, but it was a graduating class of 180 people. Mm-hmm. It was a small town, and so being a troublemaker was easy to do.
Yeah.
And
probably fun. There was probably not much else to do. So.
That's kind of what I did. From there, at 18, I was told to basically get out. I had the choice of doing whatever I want as long as it wasn't home.
So how did your mother react to this? Was she going along with him?
She was, and here's why I think that is because there was such a stigma, and she had been through that divorce at a very young age. She was determined to make peace and stay married, I think.
I see, yeah.
And And so that's what I thought. I didn't care as long as I got to kill things and break things and kill people. I was okay with that. So.
That's what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Were you like really aggressive? Are you serious when you say that you wouldn't have minded killing somebody?
You know, in hindsight, the best thing that happened to me was they didn't give me either of those positions. But at the time, I thought for sure that's what I wanted.
Wow.
So it was, yeah.
So yeah, you were kind of an aggressive guy, huh?
I was, yeah. So after joining the Marine Corps, I was there 5 years. Still wasn't walking in the faith. Big on sports, big on Marine Corps stuff, got out. And, you know, I had mentioned this to you some time ago. My relationship with my stepfather, I think, I don't know, there may require some couch time.
Does that mean you were making people more broke if you were a broker?
No, I just, most of the time, no.
No, okay, good.
But with the stock brokerage, I simply, you know, got 9 people and did well for a long period of time. I did a radio show and that type of stuff. And I saw myself as someone who made decisions, and based upon the input I put in, hopefully money would come out the other side.
So it was very important for you to be in control. And you were like a money machine. There'd be work here and then processing and then money.
I saw it as pragmatic. Yeah, it was a very pragmatic approach to life.
I see.
You just, you know, you make good decisions, money comes out the other side,
Right.
kind of how I saw the world. If you don't make good decisions, money doesn't come out. But it was all incumbent upon me
Right.
to do it.
And your self-esteem was based on making
Yeah. At 29, everything went wrong, and I mean everything. It was it was a terrible time. My mother died, my father died, my stepfather died, all within a very short period of time. My mother and my stepfather died 30 days apart.
At this point, just to back up a little bit, you didn't actually think God existed? You didn't,
I was
you didn't
I was
believe in
probably
him.
agnostic. I didn't really give God a lot of thought.
So you didn't really think one way or the other about it?
No, I was kind of neutral. At least I didn't think I did.
Okay.
So I was very neutral on it. And then when my mother died, I was very angry with God. It really, really upset me. How could a good, loving God take my mother away from me? At 49, you know, she was
only 49.
49 years old, yes.
Wow, that really is very young. Huh?
So I was angry and I was bitter about the whole thing.
And how old were you?
I was 20. I was in a lawsuit with my partner. All the kinds of things were going wrong. I packed up my stuff and moved out to California.
Huh. Why did you pick California? Did you know anybody out here?
No, I didn't know anybody. I simply, when I was in the Marine Corps, I loved North and South Carolina, loved the weather there. And so I simply drew a line on the map and saw San Francisco on the other side of the United States. So I said, the weather must be the same. I'll go there.
I see.
My wife loves that story because it's pretty foolish.
It's a good story. I like it.
You
too.
know, I went across the country and figured the weather would be the same as North and South Carolina. It's very different, by the way.
Oh yeah, very different. The Gulf Streams go different directions.
So I moved out to San Francisco, and from there, I simply did motorcycle delivery for a short period of time. People, blueprints, law documents, all that kind of stuff. They hired a delivery person to take it to the offices, and you're driving through San Francisco to do that. So when I did that for about a year, and then I had a pretty good accident. I was driving probably 75, 80 miles an hour down the freeway, and a package fell off, and I looked back to check out the package, and there was a hairpin turn up ahead when I turned back around. And so there was no time to slow down or stop. I simply hit it, and my motorcycle went into the oncoming traffic, and then across the lanes,
Wow.
and off a cliff.
Oh no. That must have been absolutely petrifying.
Well,
I
you know,
can't
it's kind of
imagine
funny. It
anything
wasn't
worse.
that petrifying.
It wasn't?
No, there was what I call time compression. In other words, at that moment, everything slowed down, and people who've been in near-death a little bit later, I realized I was going to hit the pavement, and I was worried about it. But this all took place in the span of about, probably a second and a half.
Right, yeah,
And I just hit the pavement and was done.
right.
It blew out my jeans, by the way, blew out the seams on the outside and the inside. So when I stood up, I was basically wearing chaps.
And what did it do to your motorcycle? It must have been pretty
It was
trashed,
gone,
huh?
gone forever.
Wow. So a good thing that you ended up being relatively unscathed by that. God
That's
must have retrospectively been with you through that. But you probably didn't know it at the time.
I didn't.
But
And I was recovering from being angry
Yeah,
still.
yeah.
And then I met my wife in 2000. And before we got married, we started dating and we were in college. But shortly after that, we got married in 2001. And we were trying to get pregnant. Come find me. Now, she didn't tell me that at the time, but she came home and said, I want to start going to church.
Wow, you probably were negative towards that, huh? Because you were like this cool thug Marine guy, and you probably...
Well, I had gotten over the thug stage. I was more of looking for money and finding ways to make money. That was my primary driver at that point. So when she said she wanted to go to church, she's pregnant, I figure that's fine. Rub some Jesus on the kids, make them nice. Wonderful. Go ahead and you go to church. But she wound up taking me some of the time, and we went to a place that was what I would call church light. There was, smells and bells and music and laser beams and all that kind of stuff. There was a gospel in there, message in there, but
Yeah.
it was. My wife, who comes from a Jewish background, she started teaching in the preschool because she wanted to know, what are they teaching the kids? I mean, we're both neophytes. We don't understand anything that's going on. So she starts teaching in the preschool. Fortunately, the pastor's father, Al Vomsteeg, Dr. Al Vomsteeg, took me under his wing and started giving me reading books like Case for Christ, and some serious material.
Was that the one that was written from like a legal perspective about
Yeah,
why
Lee
it was
Strobel's-
valid?
Yeah, Lee Strobel's writes it, and he kind of writes right
As
a legal
lawyer.
perspective. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
As
good
if
way
he
to
were
put it.
actually proving the case.
Right, exactly. And when I read that, it made it much more real. This wasn't some fictitious. Jesus wasn't some fictitious person. It wasn't. Were based on historical events, or a lot of them were.
And provably true.
Well, at that time, I didn't know it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it at least got me to the point where I was willing to read the Bible and willing to look at it in a serious way. So from that point, I started leading small groups and got more involved. I was still kind of anomalous, though. I mean, I was a Christian, but I still did. I still drank. I still did all kinds of things that people do. That's one of the interesting things about the faith is people think that when you become a Christian, that suddenly, all the fun stops. To change the way I behave. Now, a little bit, not a big deal. So I led the small group. The other thing that happened was in 2008, there was a collapse. Now, at this time, I was a real estate broker, and I was working foreclosures. So I'd find properties in foreclosure, and then I'd find an investor to buy that property, and I'd make a fee for arranging that transaction.
Yeah. And you saw the crash coming.
Yeah.
And so you knew, hey, I am in good shape because I'm a foreclosure expert.
I did, for about 6-7 years, you could see the collapse coming a mile away, I thought at least.
Really?
And I thought when it happened, oh man, I was going to be loaded. I was going to make a ton of money.
That would be what I would think too.
Because I'm in the business. I'm in that niche that nobody wants to touch.
Yeah.
But what
that makes perfect sense. I can see why you would think that.
All the signs went up, foreclosure expert, and so my income went from 5 digits down to $8,000 in 2008.
So that all your self-esteem was wrapped up in being able to make money, and so your self-esteem must have collapsed at that point.
No, actually, just the opposite.
Oh.
And that's
Why was that?
it was kind of a turning point for me. If it had happened earlier, it would have changed my self-esteem. I would have seen myself as a failure. All kinds of things would have happened bad. But this time around, I had been baptized the year before, and I had been going to church for about 3 or 4 years. This time it was a little different. My process allowed me to make mistakes. And so because of that, my faith grew, because I didn't have to be tied to a success every single time I did something.
I see.
So
having accepted Jesus took a lot of stress out of your life, kind of.
was my wife had been wanting to get her master's degree. And she mentioned the seminary, and I was kind of blasé. Once again, I wasn't really excited about it. But my wife got a card in the mail that said, hey, come to seminary and finish your degree, about 2 weeks after she mentioned it.
Was it addressed to her?
No, it was addressed to a resident.
Oh, that's weird.
So she showed it to me, and we went down there and figured we could go for about the same cost as we're living right now. So we said, okay, let's go on seminary, and we'll do that. So I was still in the mode of happy wife, happy life. Let her do her thing. I'll do my thing. We'll be all set. And I was setting up and trying to figure out how I was going to make money while we're at seminary. I mean, I've got to provide, right? So I was thinking.
Little S.
There was no one else around, and it said you need to finish school. And that kind of changed my whole perspective, because until that point, I had been driving the car. I thought I was in charge.
Thought you were.
Right. I thought I was pretty certain I was in charge, and I was making all the decisions, and, I make good decisions, money comes out the other side. With that voice, though, it made me realize that I wasn't driving the car. That, in fact, I was the little kid in the back seat with the rubber steering wheel.
That's a very funny analogy.
Plastic steering
I like
wheel and
that.
the rubber horn. And sometimes I turned with the car, and sometimes
And the car would go the right way anyhow.
Right.
Even though, so that's really funny.
So it changed my perspective dramatically. In fact, it took me 3 days to tell my wife.
Because you had to figure out how to explain it.
I didn't know what to do with this information. I didn't, how am I going to make money? That was my first concern. How am I going to make money going to seminary? I mean, that's silly. So after that, we simply I simply started going back to school, and money has kind of taken a back seat.
Cool.
What changed, though, was my ability to not base all decisions on money.
So your success was now rooted in other things other than money.
Yes, and I can prove it. I'll show you the car I'm driving. So now we're getting ready to graduate. My wife and I are getting ready to graduate in May together.
This coming May?
This coming May. She'll get her educational leadership, and I'll get my MDiv.
Wow.
So that's kind of what. Because I still struggle with that. Now, there's schools of thought out there that deal with these, the theology that deals with these situations, but it's still, if God wanted Moses on top of the hill, he could have levitated him there. But he wanted a relationship. So there's this friction between our will and his will, and I still struggle mightily to try and figure that out.
Well, he's a hard one to figure out.
Yeah, so that's one of the problems I have. I also think there's a problem with the church in general in that we don't relate well to people and get them involved in the church. In other words, people like to be entertained.
Yeah, you were saying that you think society is totally focused now on keeping people amused.
Well, we've got all kinds of things to do that with. We've got phones, we've got Facebook, we've got Twitter.
Netflix.
Sit there and are thinking about what they're going to do next with the Twitter account or their Facebook account or whatever it is.
Or they're playing games on their phone and pretending they're reading the Bible.
Could be. So, we got to chronically amuse people.
Right.
Or they don't pay attention. So that's I think a big problem with society and the church. We've got to find a way to bring people in and without being entertaining, be relevant.
Right. And make them stay, and even though they might, get turned off by some things, you don't want to drive them out, but you do want to preach.
You gotta kind of walk the edge a little bit.
You do.
Now you had asked about what we're doing now. It's kind of interesting you brought that up.
Yeah.
I just got back from Mongolia.
Oh, you did?
My
Did
wife.
you go with your wife?
No, I did not go with my wife. This was kind of a recon trip. In the country of Mongolia. Flew in there Thanksgiving week. Spent some time there. Very cold. Very cold. It was, in some of the mountains, it was negative 30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And there's lots of snow.
Oh, you really want to go to Mongolia? You must have gotten some strong indication from God to go to a place where it gets to be negative 30.
Here's the thing. Just 20 years ago, there were no Christians in the country. It had been invaded by the Soviet Union. Every building, every city was built by the Soviets. And there were 4 Christians in the country at that time when they left in 1989, 1990. The Soviet Union collapsed, and they left.
The 4 Christians?
No. The Soviet Union left.
The Soviet Union.
And so there were 4 Christians. They were being monitored. So there was a huge... And a lot of them have failed, but a lot of them have taken root too. So there's probably about 5% of the country's now Christian. And there's hope that by 2020 they'll be at 10%. So the church is growing. They need a lot of support from men in particular. When the Soviets came in, they brought vodka with them. And so a lot of the men are drunks all the time. Wow. And the women kind of lead in society. In the cities, about half the population is in cities. In the cities, the women lead. Because
they lead what, the religious service?
No, they might lead that too. When I was in a church there was 2 guys and 40 women, to give you an idea. Oh. But they also lead in society. They lead in teaching and the medical profession and lawyers. A lot of the women.
Serious?
Yeah,
This
no.
is because the men are all drunk? So
a lot of
so
them
the
are.
women
That's right. Yeah.
Really?
Leadership. We hope to bring that with us. We hope to teach English. What our long-term goal is to make it profitable so that missionaries in the future can go there and be subsidized.
Oh.
So that's what we're hoping for.
So what do you think? What do you think has God spoken to you? Is to send you to Mongolia? Or?
I wouldn't say he spoke to us. That one event happened. I don't know if it'll ever happen again, where I heard his voice. But having said that, we prayed for a long time about the right place to go, and we wanted our whole family engaged.
You have a son, right? And do you have a daughter too?
2 sons, 1 daughter, and so we wanted the whole family engaged, and we couldn't find anything for a year and a half. It got to the point where I talked to one of the professors and said, you know, what's going on? I'm supposed to have this 800 number with God, and I've been praying for a year and a half. Gave me some suggestions, but I came back and made an intellectual decision to go to Cambodia because we knew people there. We understood what the culture was there. So we were getting ready to announce that, and then I got a call from the country of Mongolia, and they said, hey, we need you and your wife to come to the country of Mongolia. We need you to start a business and her to teach there.
Is she going to be teaching English?
Yes. So, I mean, that's exactly what we're praying for. That's exactly what we're hoping for. So it fit.
Good.
And so it probably was God. I certainly think it was. But it you know, the thing is, I was trying to put it on my timetable, as we often want to do. God, I want it now. And I can wait a few days or a week or two, but come on, this is, you know, and it doesn't work that way. So we had made a decision to go somewhere, and God called us to Mongolia. Wow. So is it a warm country? Nope. It's pretty barren, actually. It's very arid, very cold.
Does it get hot in the summer?
It gets hot in the summer. There's no trees. It's just mountains, some grassland, and cold weather most of the year.
And you're going to be there for 2 to 5 years, right?
2 to 5 years. So that's what we're looking at.
Wow. You coming back to the Bay Area after that?
I might. Yeah, I think so. We'll see.
All right.
But I wouldn't change a thing. You know, that's the thing is, despite all that happened and all the crazy things that I did and all the silly stuff, and I wouldn't change a thing. God has led me to each point in my life, and although I've made a fool of myself a great many times, I can see now how a lot of those things benefit me. And so they're being used in a positive way.
Yeah, I guess it's true. God works for good, all things.
So
those who are called according to his purpose.
That's how it's turning out, yes.
Wow. Well, that's very good. I think our time has just about run out, and we just want to thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us.